Oh, I'm stressed. It's not a loss, that's good, but it's not a win.
And Stevens lined him up too. Let there be no mistake about that. Stevens went at him at 100 miles an hour. He get another go. And he grabs him. He's grabbed play on for holding the man.
Well, I don't know what to say after that, but welcome back to Further North. I'm still stressed. I'm still on the come down. We've drawn against Brisbane. A weird feeling. Not a loss, which is nice, but also not a win. And, of course, to help me dissect all of the emotions, we've got Chief back on the pod. Thank you for jumping on, mate, after such a roller coaster of a game.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. It's good to be back, mate. It's been a while. It's also good to see that we're still ahead of Draw FC this year. We're still barely ahead of Draw FC. We're 2 points ahead, so hopefully we can maintain this lead in the back half of the year.
Well, look, honourable loss FC to now Draw FC, I'd say that's improvement, mate. So we're on the right track. Maybe win FC one day, but I'm not going to hold my breath too much for that. So, look, let's get straight into it. We've gone down to Tasmania against the reigning premiers, Brisbane Lions, and I think it's safe to say I hadn't got my hopes up very high. I didn't know any North fan that really did. I had a couple of people message me saying, I think we're a sneaky chance, but look, you never really take those too seriously. It's just, I'm sure fans in their hearts thinking we can win. What was your expectation for this game leading up to it?
I think, you mentioned honourable loss FC, and I think that was my hope. It was a 4-goal loss. If we lost by 4 goals, I think I'd be pretty happy. I think for the last 4 weeks, probably 3 weeks, we've been a little bit better. Obviously, we're a little bit more competitive. So the hope was to just continue that form and hopefully just take some more out of the game. I mean, it's a good chance for our young mids to have a go against an experienced lineup, which we did, and it's also a good chance for us to go up against a team that structures up really well, and also test your mettle against the best in the league. I mean, they're a top 4 side in the league. We know that, and it's a good chance for us to get a good look at that. And my expectations were low, and we obviously slightly exceeded them.
And does this make you feel better going into next week against the Tigers, which we can talk a little bit more about later? But I know for me, I feel a lot more confident now after especially 3 performances in a row, because sort of what you touched on there, like the last 3 weeks have been good ever since that Carlton loss, that embarrassment on Good Friday. We have actually been very, very competitive. And for me, the last 2 weeks, even though we put in good shifts, it didn't make me feel better about where the club was at. But this performance today did make me feel a lot better. Not great, because we still didn't win and we've got so much work to do, but it definitely made me feel better about where the club is at and maybe that we are improving.
Yeah, I would say mixed feelings, to be honest. I think our late game management has been poor. I think that's fair to say, particularly against Essendon, I think, but even against Port, I think our late game management was really, really poor. We weren't able to execute our skills when it mattered. We weren't able to execute the game plan when it mattered. And I actually get the feeling that this is actually very similar, to be honest. The end of this game, look, if we just look at the end of this game in a microcosm, it was poorly executed. There's no getting away from that. And it's not anybody's, like, I don't want to put the blame on anybody, one player. Obviously, the Costanti kick into Larky at the end. A few other examples where we just kind of could have been a little bit more aggressive, but we didn't. They cost us big time.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I think, we were just saying, like, being in front of our shots in front of goal. Basically all year, I feel like our accuracy in front of goal has been really, really poor. And, I felt like at 3/4 time we should be leading. We can go through maybe really quickly quarter by quarter. I mean, look, the first quarter, I think we were lucky to be as close as we were. Definitely felt like Brisbane were really attempting to break the game open. But, we conceded 3 shots within about a minute. The first minute of the game, and instantly I'm just thinking, especially with all the focus being on improved starts, how bad our first quarters have been, and digging ourselves into a hole and having to get out. Overall, I think it was a good performance in the first quarter compared to what we've been doing. It didn't feel good early, but we did steady and we did stem the flow and really limit their access into the 50. And they missed some. We missed plenty of chances too. I mean, it was exactly the same: points, goals, posts, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's a tick for our first quarter compared to where we've been at. And then the second quarter, we just sort of came out and went bang. And it's really cool to see that we have that capability. We actually put some good bits of play together and looked like a football team for a bit. But yeah, give me your rundown on the first quarter, and then let's go into the second.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the first play of the game, Lachie Neale gets one out the front, and they kick a goal after about 35 seconds. So you're obviously thinking same old story. But you know what? I think one thing that I will credit this team on, at least producing, and I think numbers-wise, we've seen this a little bit, is they just hang around. They just will do whatever they can to just hang around. Now, whether it's pressure around the ball or whether it's just getting that hand in or whatever it is, we just managed to stay within 20 or 25. And that's maybe not striking distance, but it's the least the game is alive. And with the exception of really Carlton and Sydney, we've done that quite well. And we did this really quite well in the first quarter, is we just scrapped and scrounged and did whatever we could to stay near them. I mean, look, you're exactly right. They should have been further ahead. They didn't. They missed some gilt-edged opportunities going forward. I think my feeling in the first quarter, and this was throughout the game, was they were only 5 minutes away from completely blowing the game apart.
It did feel on a knife's edge a lot for me, yeah.
But that said, they didn't. And when we needed to, we muscled up and we got our pressure up and we were able to get the ball forward a little bit. And you're exactly right. Leading into the second quarter, we actually, that first 5 minutes, we played a little bit of footy, which is good to see. And we can do that. The run off the half back line, you get that turnover at half back. That's your green light to just go fast. And we did that a couple of times and we looked really, really good. And we can do that. I would like to see it more, but next week's another week.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, look, Colby's goal, fantastic. And then Wardlaw's goal, really nice as well. So two of the younger guys who we've wanted to see a little bit more from. Wardlaw's been competitive, but, his maybe cleanliness has always been a little bit of a question, but really nice for the two young guys to sort of step up and put us ahead in this game. And, yeah, the rest of the quarter, I don't know. It was a weird quarter. Once again, it sort of felt like Brisbane were on top. And they did extend the lead, but it didn't feel like we were completely out of it, but it kind of felt like we weren't close, but we weren't far. It was a bit of a in-between sort of thing. So, we sort of come out once again at the start of the quarter in the third, we kick a goal, Cam Zerha puts one through. And then it was once again really, really scrappy. And then you look at the second half of the third and the amount of shots we had, we absolutely should have been leading at three-quarter time. Dylan Stevens kicked a really, really nice goal, almost a Jai Simpkin-esque sidestep. And then Larky goal not long after that. And then, I'm just looking at the timeline here, like Larky kicked a point. I think Parker had one in here somewhere.
He kicked a point earlier as well.
He did, and they're all so gettable as well. And I went into three-quarter time going, we should be leading.
And that hurts, right? Like, because you, against really good teams, you need to capitalise on your opportunities. I mean, against a team that's third on the, say, 13th, like against Essendon, we probably would have been leading by a couple of goals. But if you do that same thing against Brisbane, you can't. You're gonna pay eventually. Like, we might not be straight away, but eventually it will pay. I think the game was a weird holding pattern, mate, particularly in that second quarter where there were long periods of time where there wasn't really much open play and it was very, very scrappy. And what it came down to was, how could you capitalise on turnover is what it came down to. And that's what gave them the lead. We turned it over a couple of times and then they were able to take it straight down the ground, and then it was just like one or two mistakes and then they've scored a couple of goals. And one thing that I will note is that I don't think because we've really tightened up our game style recently. The last 3 weeks we've really tightened up, and you look at the scores against 94 94 or 96 or whatever it was, and then against Essendon it was low, and then this week it's low again, is we've really tightened up our defence, our team defence. And part of that is not turning it over in really bad positions. And what I've noticed today particularly is, even though I just said we had a few turnovers in the second quarter that were capitalised on, we were able to, even when we did turn it over, be able to hold them up or be able to turn it over again in our direction. So I thought that was a really big positive for this game.
And especially with Jackson Archer out of the side, like, I think our pressure at ground level in our back 50 has been a lot better as well. I mean, that Carlton game, we just got torched as soon as the ball hit the ground as well. And we don't seem to be conceding goals. We're not conceding. I can't remember in that game lots of marks and clean shots at goal, like from big key forwards. Like, we're not having one player sort of tear us apart. Hipwood got a couple, but that was sort of, he had the one from outside 50, then one sort of near the boundary line. And we're not giving them those like 30, 40 metres out directly in front sort of shots. And then when it hits the ground, we're not just spewing it towards their goal and like fumbling the ball as much. We're at least clearing it a bit better. So, yeah, really good job by the defence, and the defence was definitely really impressive in today's game. And then look, we go into the fourth, and there's so many things to say about this quarter. I mean, as a neutral, it must have been a pretty exciting quarter to watch. Once again, not the cleanest game ever, but it's almost like we're bringing teams down to our level a bit now. I don't think we're rising at all necessarily, because the Lions were definitely cleaner all day. But our grittiness and our determination, when we can bring it, is almost bringing teams down to our level a bit, and we can scrap and fight it and keep it close. And look, once again, both teams sort of had opportunities in the last quarter. Parker kicked a goal, I think it was from a free kick, and Constanti, I thought he was going to give him the shush again. That's something I was looking forward to seeing. Darling, a couple of goals on the night, and Cam Rayner, I guess, went back and just slotted one cool and calm as you like. And unfortunately, it just felt like the goals we were getting, we worked so hard for them, and then we would give up an easy transition. It led to the Rayner goal and that sort of stuff. So it was frustrating, but I mean, look, maybe the main contributor in that last quarter, just to point out, we'll talk about him more in a little bit, is Charlie Comben, where took a couple of huge intercept marks sort of on our half back line to stop Brisbane getting a point or getting that score that would have put them over the line. And look, we come out with the draw. I do think, I know we're upset with the draw, and I definitely felt a bit weird after the game thinking, geez, what if Constanti kicked it long? But I know they don't know exactly how long is left, and at least we tried to enter the 50 to our leading forward, and I think that is a positive. So I'm not going to blame Constanti for... It's easy for us to say that on the television, watching it, knowing how many seconds are on the clock. So no blame on Constanti there. He tried to do the right thing to get us a shot at goal, but really, really unfortunate. But I think 2 points, and yes, it's a draw, but 2 points against Brisbane, it gives us that little breathing room from the Eagles below and keeps us in touch with Richmond a little bit easier for next week as well. And I think 2 points against the reigning premiers is not something to, turn our noses up at. None of us were expecting a win. We could have won it, and I wish we won it so bad. But, after the emotion left me and sort of settled, I think getting a couple of points, which is really important to us on the table for our potential position and keeping in touch and, the gap between all the bottom 3 or 4, I think I'm pretty happy with the performance. I think I'm pretty happy with the result, even though I would have obviously wanted the win, but a draw is better than a loss, and I think we have to take that as a positive.
Yeah.
Not that I'm stoked on it, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm spinning it positive, I know.
Yeah, and which I appreciate, and I think that's good, Josh, for you to spin the positive.
About time.
For once, yeah. I'm going to be the opposite. I'm going to be bad cop today, because I'm as frustrated about this draw as I was about the loss against Essendon, as I was about the loss against Port. And the reason is quite simple. It's not about the opposition. It's about us. Like, each of those games, the end sequence was 100% about us and whether we could execute. It didn't even matter about the opposition, really, because it was all on our bat. And I guess the frustration is that we, in 3 weeks, 3 consecutive weeks, we haven't executed. And I think there are definitely positives to take out of this game, 100%. But I definitely think this is a massive, massive disappointment. And we shouldn't, as a supporter base, look at this as a win. I know a lot of people won't. I know a lot of people will go, oh, it's a draw. But you could see how much it meant to Clarko in the coach's box.
Yeah, he was losing his head a bit.
There's a woman who sits next to Clarko, an analyst, probably, I assume, and she must have earplugs in. She did not flinch. Clarko is absolutely losing it in the coach's box. And you know what? I didn't see Todd Viney usually just does the little sideways just tap on the shoulder just to settle him down. Didn't even see that. Clarko was absolutely losing it, and that's why, because he knows that we can do better, and that's why I'm so frustrated about it. By the way, the Constanti shush, he could have shushed Josh, but there was no one there to shush.
It's true, yeah. You know what? It's a bigger crowd than I thought would be down there. I mean, look, cold Hobart night. Brisbane, the furthest team possibly away. Well, I guess Freo and the Western Australian teams. But, couldn't get much further than Brisbane coming down, and North are pretty rubbish. So, look, good job to anyone who went down there to that. I'm going down to the Richmond one. I'll be down at Ninja Park for our last Tassie game. But, yeah, you really know the seat colours are incredibly blue when you watch games down there, and it's been like that for a while. So, but hey, it'd probably be about 3 degrees down there. So good on those fans. Cold. But I know what you mean. Like, I'm definitely not like. I think in a nutshell where we are, I want to take it as a positive because that performance made me feel more proud than the last two did. I was pissed off with the last two. I didn't, it was just no win. Doesn't matter, bad. But I think I completely agree with what you said where we didn't execute and it was on our terms. But the fact it was on our terms, I think is a good thing moving forward. And if we're against half the teams in the league in that situation, we've got a better chance because they're the reigning premiers. So, look, I don't want to accept a draw, absolutely not. But I think the overall performance and package makes me feel a lot better about, the last 2 weeks haven't been an anomaly and we are taking some steps forward. So, look, heartbreaker. It was really, I didn't know how to feel after the game, to be honest with you, but who does after a draw? And you could tell Jai, and I think Chom did an interview after, and they didn't really know how to feel either. So, look, let's go through a few of the different lines of the team. I want to start with the defence this week because they're definitely the ones to highlight. And we've had Toby Pink coming back in this team. Aiden Core came in. Obviously, Archer going out as well. How did you feel about the lineup that we sort of selected in defence with Archer going out and Dawson and bringing in Core and Pink? Obviously, a lot of key position players coming in. How did you feel going into it? Did you think they were the right changes or would you made anything different?
I was actually a little bit surprised, Josh, to be perfectly honest with you, because if you look at the successful forwards for Brisbane, particularly over the last 18 months, it's been mid-sized forwards that have really done the damage for them. If you look at guys like Lohman, Archie, Rayner, obviously Cameron is a small forward, but he's in that mould. I was really surprised that you lose a small defender and then you bring in a taller defender. Obviously they got Hipwood and Morris who are pretty. They're good players. They're not probably top 15 forwards in the competition, like tall forwards in the competition, but they're serviceable and they've got a grand final medal, so they're nobody's fools. But I was surprised at that selection, particularly Pink. Look, I know that you are a big fan of Pink. I know that there are a lot of people out there who wanted Pink to come in instead of Logue. I was surprised that Pink came in instead of Logue, but I also don't think Pink did anything particularly bad or good. I think he was pretty solid, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
What it did allow is Chom to play third man up, and that particularly towards the end of the game really started to show pay dividends. Because he was able to peel off and affect the contest.
I really want to see that 3 key defender unit play a little bit more together now. I think that's from the 9 rounds in. I think that's been the best combination. I'm glad they brought Pink back in over Logue. I don't think Logue has done much to justify his spot this year, and even in the 2s, he was okay, but didn't maybe stand out. And I know, Toby Pink's performance, our defence looked great against the Ds, even though that's yonks ago, but our defence has never looked better this season, except with that Demons game. And then you look at the Adelaide game where I think we can hold our heads up after that. And I thought Pink did pretty well in that game. So I'm glad to see him get another shot. And, that defensive trio for me right now, I think is our best three with the key defenders. Core can play tall and small a little bit as well. And you're right, like Charlie Comben saved us in that game. So allowing him to drift is arguably the difference in the game between, the result we got and a loss. So I was really happy to see Pink in. You're right. Didn't maybe do anything outstanding, but what he did do was start a fantastic bit of transition play where he sort of got the ball on the ground, needed to hit the handball clean. I can't remember the player that he hit with the handball, but we went straight up the guts and we got a scoring opportunity out of it. And
it was McKercher maybe.
It might have been,
off the half-back line, yeah. And it was that was just a slingshot play. It was absolutely vital. But you're exactly right, mate. Pink, he's done enough to keep his spot at least. Like we're not making a change in the key defence next week. Yeah. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So, look, good on Pink, and look, we can talk about Charlie Comben a little bit here. Just so strong in the air, and I think he went 95% by foot as well. I think he got 21 possessions, I believe, that I looked at before, but I'll get the stats back up now in front of me. But
21,
one of his
21 marks.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
9 marks.
Fantastic stuff and really high percentage by foot. Even when he took the marks sort of around the goal square, switching to each pocket and that sort of stuff, made the right call, hit the target, and then just did exactly what he needed to do. And in those moments, I used his body really, really well. I think Comben's one-on-one defending has been decent the last couple of weeks against the Power and the Bombers, or a lot improved. If anything else. So I think he's been really, really good back there. And, every single week we've still got debates on Chom forward, Chom back. I even started to hint at with panic stations a few weeks ago. But realistically, I mean, Chom's a defender now. And I think we've got to not think about putting him forward. He's been our best defender for probably last year and this year. Core was fantastic last year too. But, he's been really, really solid this year. And the only player to play every game in our defence is a key position. So, he's the pillar back there, and he's the guy to build around with those more lockdown roles, which Core and Pink did play, allowing Chom to do that. He's a crucial part of that. So I can't give him enough plaudits for his performance today. It was fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. He was definitely our best defender. I think he was excellent, particularly in the end game. Obviously, the end game was a little bit forward and back, but one thing that I was incredibly not surprised, but really happy with at the end of the game is Comben's coolness under pressure. He was under pressure 2 or 3 times there to take a contested intercept mark, and he did it. And really, if we were to win the game with that last sequence where we wouldn't have won the game, or at least had that last sequence without him taking the mark, getting back off the mark quickly, and then switching. So yeah, big praise for Chom. I will say though that I understand when people say that we should just play him permanently back, and I agree with that up until the point when, if we just need 1 or 2 quarters here and there just to mix things up. I mean, I think, it's not him making a permanent move forward, but I think sometimes maybe to expose or break glass in case of emergency, I think he could do it. But I think at the moment the plan would be to just keep him permanently back.
Yeah, no, look, I don't mind that. I mean, we see Sicily go forward. We see Charlie Curnow go back for the Blues quite often as well. So, yeah, you're right. Like in certain scenarios, I would love to see him get swung forward. I mean, we've seen Aiden Core go forward. I can't remember which game it was. It was one of the first 3 games of the season, but we saw Aiden Core go forward for some reason and try and get a mark up there. I think maybe it wasn't the Gold Coast.
It was West Coast. It was West Coast in Bunbury.
Oh, that's right. It was too. It was a pre-season.
He nearly took a hanger at the end.
Yeah, wow. So, look, who knows? But look, fantastic for Charlie Comben. And someone else I think played pretty admirably today. I mean, McDonald had the task on Cameron. Now, Cameron had a few opportunities. His form right now isn't great. And in front of goal, he's been pretty poor this season. But, going into the game, no Jackson Archer. McDonald needs to step up. Jackson Archer's only played 2 games this season. He's really needed to take that role on board. And I think he did really, really well. Not an outstanding game by any means, not something you're going to be screaming from the rooftops about. But when you look at that back line and where the hole can lie, Charlie Cameron is the player you would point to be like, he could break the game open today, and we didn't let that happen. I think McDonald did a really admirable job just stemming his ability to break the game open.
Yeah, I also think that this is a controversial call, but I also think that he definitely didn't seem to have a HIA when he should have. I don't think we saw all of the footage on the bench, but he came on very quickly after he had the head knock with Berry. Berry obviously out after that head clash with McDonald and out with concussion, and then McDonald kind of came on almost like it seems like he came on 3 to 5 minutes later. So yeah, I don't know. I felt that was a little bit sketchy, but you know what? After that, he played pretty well. He did enough.
Do you think he's going to get suspended?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I haven't even
with what the AFL's been doing, I think he probably will and he shouldn't be. Obviously, both players just sort of went for the ball. It seemed a little bit late, but you know, with the way the league is, I think he's probably going to get 3 weeks because it ended with concussion. Even though it's ridiculous, but I mean that's just the state of the game at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think there's mitigating circumstances. It was like quite a long way off the ball. Like I actually thought that it might have been a free against Berry for shepherding, like because it was 3 or 4 minutes behind where the mark was taken, and he did step in front of because he kind of turned to make the play further on, and then him and McDonald just head clashed. I think this one might be personally. I think this one will be a football incident. But you know, Michael Christian, he's got his click wheel in his office at AFL, and he just spins that thing, and then whatever comes out, he just goes, "Yep, that's a suspension. That isn't. That's 3 weeks. That's 2 weeks. That's 8 weeks. Who knows? Who knows?"
It's confused. I mean, look, that's the thing, isn't it? We don't know, and we've got no idea. If it's 3 weeks, I won't be shocked. If it's none, I'll be like, well, that's kind of what it's meant to be. So, you really have absolutely no idea. Honestly, when I saw it, I thought he probably hit him a little bit late, and I thought, he's going to be in a little bit of trouble there, even though, once again, it absolutely should not be, but that's the state of the game at the moment. The last one, a couple we'll touch on the back line. I mean, Hardiman, I think he played one of his better games for the club today. I think he's been a really, really good piece in that back line, obviously not having to have McKerches and Finn O'Sullivan's maybe running off the half back line as much. His distribution from the back line has been pretty good, but his physicality and defensive ability is there too. And like with all this talk about getting Maynard and stuff, if he can step up and fill in that role while Jackson Archer comes back, geez, he's that Maynard type guy. Maybe doesn't have as much dog in him, or as much mongrel in him, but he's definitely a cleaner player, and I really like what he's bringing. I think he's locked his spot at the moment, and yes, he got his opportunity through injury, but even when people come back, I think it's going to be hard to drop someone like that, and they definitely shouldn't.
Yeah, for sure. I agree completely. I think Hardiman's been really good. I mean, let's not forget he's still really, really young. He's like 20, so he's still finding his way in the game. I think, as we've talked about many times on this podcast, is that he's the natural replacement for McDonald when and if that happens. I also think that he's kind of almost come in for the go-to role, hasn't he? Where he's that sort of plays on the hybrid forward, can play slightly tall, slightly small, and runs off quite a lot, as opposed to the Caleb Daniel distributor role. So I think he's been really, really good.
And with the distributing role, I mean, let's talk about Daniel and Sheasel. That was sort of the two from there. I think that was one of Sheasel's better games. I've only seen the headline just before he jumped on, but Kane Corns has apparently praised Harry Sheasel for his game, walking back his comments already, which is no surprise there. But a lot of conjecture online once again about Caleb Daniel. I don't think he's having a bad season. I wouldn't say he's having a great time either. I think he's been neutral, maybe slightly above that for me personally, but there's plenty of fans who I know want him dropped and are saying this is one of the worst signings we've ever made. I think that's a complete overreaction, and I still want to see him in this team while we build that defence and we do get more continuity, because I don't think he's played that bad the last couple of weeks. Should he be doing better? Yeah, potentially, but I don't know. I feel that's how I feel about it, but I can also understand other people who feel completely different. What's your sort of stance on Daniel, and maybe mention your thoughts on Sheasel a bit too?
Yeah, so you make a good point. I think there's a few different things to just really quickly unpack. I think the first thing is that we've given up what appears to be quite a lot for Caleb Daniel. I don't think that. I think the reality is he's still in his 20s. He's a known commodity. He's a premiership player, all Australian. So he does come with a certain level of cachet, and I think that that's great. I think one thing that we don't allow for him is the fact that he's coming into a completely new system, and a system that is factually worse than what he was coming from. So we're basically putting him into a really no-win situation where he is still finding out, when do I defend, when do I attack, when I get the ball, where do I look? Like, these are all things that will take time to come. But I also think that if we're going to play the defence with that role, and look, the reality is in today's football, you need a distributor at half-back. That's just how the game is played now. Basically an unaccountable half-back. Caleb Daniel is the best that we have at the moment, along with Sheasel. I think conceptually Fisher is around that mark, but we've got a little bit of depth there. Who would you like, Caleb Daniel or Fisher? I would like Caleb Daniel more often than that. So, I've got no real problem with how he's going. I also think that when we start, as we've started to over the last little bit, we'll start rolling into hopefully a little bit more form and get a little bit more attacking off half back. I think you're really going to see Caleb Daniel come into his own in those circumstances. As for Harry Sheasel, I think he just played pretty well.
Yeah. I kind of agree with that, actually. I was thinking about it just then, and I'm like, Harry Sheasel was really good numbers, clean with the ball. I think his contested work has been very good as well. Maybe nothing outstanding, but I like him back there, and I think this is going to be the place to get his best form back. With your point on Daniel, I mean, the Bulldogs' handballing ability is second to none, especially like over the last 10 years. I don't think there's been a better handballing side than the Bulldogs, especially in those late 2010s. So, going from that system where they can create space in tight pockets so much better than us, we're sort of forcing him to kick instead of giving him the space to operate when we know he can hit a target, and the leading targets for the Bulldogs are much better for him to hit too. So I think we need to chill on Daniel a little bit. Let's stop overreacting, let him bed into the team. He's played 9 games for the club, so let's just chill out a little bit. You wouldn't rather Fisher there. I don't care what people say. Fisher's had 1 game, he gets injured all the time. I like him too, but and I've been a Fisher backer, but whoever that half back role is for us, McDonald, Fisher, Daniel, I don't think there's any surprise. They're always the guy we target the most because they're always the most exposed, and their turnovers, even though they might not get as many as some of our midfielders, lead to goals, and that's what makes them stand out. So you're right. He's a premium ball user. Once we get better, which we are in defence, I think he'll start to shine a little bit more.
Am I happy? Am I sad? Not sure. There was a lot more fight from the boys tonight, but we definitely let that one slip again. Go North.
We just don't want to win. We genuinely just do not want to win. We better beat Richmond next week, otherwise I might throw myself off the MCG.
I was going to be happy if it was within 4 goals. The fact it was a draw, I should be very pleased. Now, you're going to make fun of me for this, but I had money on North to win, and I also had money on Brisbane to win. Either way, I was going to make a profit. The only way I wasn't going to win any money is if they drew, and that's what happened. Okay, I should stop placing bets, shouldn't I?
Don't quite know how to feel about that one, to be honest. I went into the game, like many of us, thinking we'd get nowhere near Brisbane. But despite how frustrating that game was to watch, we managed to come away with 2 points. Would much rather the other 2 as well, but anywho, bring on the Tigers next week. Go Roos.
Honestly, taking that, I'm not complaining with it at all. Considering they're number 1, we're number 17 on the ladder, not complaining at all. Charlie in the Intercept Factory, the Bull, Wardlaw, it's there. LDU, finally, we've seen what we've expected out of LDU. Sheasel, consistent as always, perfect. Imagine having Curtis in that team today. It probably would have just got us over the line. Cannot complain.
Let's go to the midfield then. I've got a few things about the midfield I would like to say, I guess, but I want you to lead this one off. Give me a name of someone who stood out to you in the midfield.
Look, I think it's pretty... Look, first half is clearly George. I think George really played
His
well
attack
in
on the footy
half.
is so good to watch.
It's great. He's just... You know what it is? He just brings a level of intensity that we don't have otherwise. He when he's around the ball, you know that someone's going to go in and get it. Yep. And even if they don't get it, that you know someone's going to attack it as hard as they can. And you know what, Josh? This is an interesting one because I've been taking in a lot of strategic stuff of recent times, and one thing that's been mentioned often about the Bulldogs is their spacing. Their spacing at stoppages. So your point about the handball is a good one. One of the reasons why the handball looks so good is because they space perfectly at stoppages, and that means that they don't have two players going in for the same ball. Basically. And what George does to our spacing is really important. What happens is when George is there, you know George is going in for the ball. Yeah. And you know that he's more likely than not going to at least get his hands on it. So it means you don't go to the ball. It means you stay on the outside. And what that does for our stoppage balance is significant, you know. And it's something that we don't really have, I guess, is that when someone goes in, everybody else stays out. But you can see when George does it, everybody knows what's happening. Everyone knows what's going to go down. So I think that's as important as anything that George brings to the table. Obviously, he's incredible with regards to his attack. I mean, he nearly took one of the marks of the year. I wish he clung to that. He kicked another goal, which was fantastic, a great finish. So,
and he's starting to get on the scoreboard too. He's kicked a few this year so far.
For sure, and yeah, definitely he's getting the ball forward of centre. I also think that, you know, he's gradually increasing his game time slowly. He had 90 minutes today of 120, so it's slowly going up. So, and obviously he ran out of a little bit of puff at the back end of the game. Like he had, you know, he finished with 19 or 20 touches. So, but the intensity that he brings is the most important thing. So I think George was it for me.
Did you see much improvement for LDU? I mean, 32 touches, 59% disposal efficiency, only 2 tackles. You know, kicked a point. I'm not sure exactly where I'm sort of standing on LDU. I mean, you know, he had 5 clearances as well from 21 CBAs. So I'm not sure. Like, he's there and he's right. He's in the game. He's doing things, but he doesn't have the polish on his game to impact like we know he can. I mean, we say this every week, the amount of times that he's getting the ball from a clearance and has more time than he thinks and just decides to put that thing on the boot is frustrating. And even when he had that shot at goal, I think it was the last quarter he had a shot at goal, a running shot at goal after he broke a few tackles. I didn't have the faith that thing was going to go through the goal. I think he just sort of hacks at the ball. And when you look at Wardlaw, 52% by foot, LDU 59% by foot, these are some of our meant to be premium midfielders. And when we're using it with such little effectiveness out of the midfield, I'm surprised we did so well from clearance, but this is what we've been saying for a long time, where we get a lot of clearances, but they're not necessarily very clean, very effective. So it was, once again, a bit of an almost game for LDU. The numbers you look at and you go, yep, but you watch the game and he probably wasn't as influential as the numbers suggest.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think it's hard. Sometimes they get a lot of 1-2s, 1-2-3s, you know, where they're having a lot of... they might have 5 possessions in like a 5 metre radius, you know what I mean, which are minimally effective. And I think in that space, I think he definitely isn't at his best at the moment, but I think he's really ready to explode. Like once he gets,
and that's my frustration though, right? Because I'm watching him and I'm like, you're on the knife's edge right now. I mean, 565 metres gained. So he pushed our team forward so much today, and he was good. I'm not saying he had a bad game at all, but it's just, and he had a couple of moments where he did get the ball, dance around someone, and hit a target in the middle. And I'm like, if he could just clean up that clearance work, disposal wise, I think we've almost got our LDU back. But yeah, it's an on the edge game. You know what I mean?
For sure, 100%. And I think, as I said, once he gets that little bit of extra confidence, I think is more of to really drive out of stoppages. And he's not doing that exactly at the moment, but he will. I'm really confident he will. Just drive out of stoppages at the front. We'll look at a million % better side. And you know what? I'm obviously not going to compare him to Chris Judd because, you know, he's not at that level right now. But the reality is that Chris Judd was not a good kick.
Neither was Patrick Dangerfield.
No. And so what we want from LDU is this: we don't want him to hit these kicks into the middle, and that's more of a Caleb Daniel Sheasel thing, right? We need him to take 10 or 15 out of the front of the stoppage and kick it long to the goal square, whereas that it's a very, very dangerous position. So I think that's what he needs to do and not worry so much about the finesse type stuff. And I'm not saying dump kick it, because that's what they do sometimes. I'm saying getting out the front of a stoppage, take 10 metres and then give it another 50.
Just take an extra second.
Yeah, that'll break things up. So, yeah, LDU close. Powell, like, minimally effective today, to be honest. McKercher probably had his moments, I would say.
Good first half from McKercher, very quiet second half.
Yeah. Simpkin, same sort of thing. Now, Josh,
I'm listening.
a very similar incident occurred today with Jai running into the forward 50, and I thought Josh is gonna bring this.
I
up
thought
on
of you in that time too.
So I thought I'd get on the front foot and blame Nick Larkey for that.
Yeah, you could potentially do that. I don't think it didn't leave my head, splattered all over the living room as much. I think Jai had his best game for the season last week, in my opinion, and I do think he's better when he's operating forward of the ball a little bit. I'd like to see Jai maybe slightly less in the guts and slightly more up forward, but he switched it onto his left, and I just knew what was going to happen, but I guess it didn't maybe cost us as much as maybe the Sydney game did and that sort of stuff. So, look, for me, and another guy I'm going to throw into this as well is maybe a Finn O'Sullivan, because Finn O'Sullivan, a good ball user, but I'm a bit confused about his role right now. He's been a bit lost the last couple of weeks. He's maybe not having, for a second draft pick playing every game bar one this year, I would have maybe wanted him in a discussion for a Rising Star nomination or something like that. And he hasn't played bad whatsoever. And I'm not maybe necessarily criticising him, but, maybe we can start to get Foss around the areas where Simpkin maybe does potentially butcher the ball. And Simpkin in front of goal, I really back. I think he tackles so hard, and, playing maybe further forward, I think will be really good for him, especially with a Paul Curtis out. So, look, Simpkin, another decent game by him. 2 weeks in a row, I think his game's been good. But then you look at all those midfielders as a package, and we'll put Powell and LDU and Wardlaw and Simpkin. They're just not good ball users. And when that's your core midfield, that's what makes me worry as a package. So I'm not going to call out Simpkin today. You can rest easy, and we don't have to scream at each other again and break up. But it's what Simpkin does every now and then. But I guess it wasn't as costly, and I think he did other things around those turnovers that made him have a good game. So good on him. I'll just touch on Power quickly. I've been saying this for a little bit, but I really am a bit lost on Tom Power. He only got 10 centre bounce attendances, so they've really dropped from the start of the year. And a real nothing game from him. Didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but almost the same sort of criticism as we've given Dylan Stevens earlier in the year. He doesn't get the footy enough. When he gets it, he does okay things. I mean, he put another one out of bounds on the full, and to be fair, butchered a couple of kicks today. I'm nearly on the point where, we've got to try something else with Powell, or I would be playing Will Phillips over him right now. And I think Powell's a good player, but I think with all the standards we all want to set amongst the club, maybe it's time to say, we need more from you. Go back, get 35 at VFL level, kick a couple, and come back and get your spot back, because his centre bounce attendances have dropped off a lot in the last month of football, and I just don't think he's impacting quite enough. His tackle pressure last week was fantastic, but I just want more from him, and maybe a cleaner ball user or maybe a more defensive-minded player can play in that role. But where do you stand on Power? Do you think I'm harsh, or do you think I've got some sort of idea what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think there's a long-standing hatred of you towards Tom Powell.
Apparently so.
I think that there's a long-standing man crush that you have on Colin McKercher. And I think it's the Tasmanian connection. No, right. You know what? I have to disagree on Powell. Today was not this is not going to go down in the Tom Powell career highlights. There's no doubt about that. I also think that you have to give the midfield of the Lions a little bit of credit. Like, they're obviously, I mean, in the midfields in the comp, they're like in the mix for the best, you would say.
Absolutely.
So I'll definitely don't know what his role was today. I suspect he was playing a little bit more of a defensive role today as opposed to what he would normally do. I'm looking at last week's stats, and he absolutely hit it out of the park. Like, He had 9 tackles, 28 touches, 110 in the dream team. So he's also averaging career highs in absolutely in every stat, and averaging 23 touches a game. So I'm not. I understand what you're saying about today, though, Josh, because you do make a good point. It's like he was a bit kind of just nothingy, really. Not bad.
I'm surprised by those numbers, to be honest with you, because I think the D's game was fantastic by him. It was the best on ground, and last week I can see the areas that he did well with his tackling, but yeah, I'm surprised maybe the numbers are that high, because I reckon he's had a lot of poor games this year, and maybe he's the link in the chain a lot, but I think I'd like to see more from him, because I think he can be a really special player and something really, really good. And I think with the hype, especially last pre-season and this pre-season on him, I think we should be demanding more, like we are for Colby. I understand what you're saying with Colby, and I think he had a really good first half. Probably his best patch of play for the year was the first half, and incredibly quiet second half. But you know, I say this all the time, so I don't want to go over it too much, but Colby offers something so special with what we don't have on this list. And Powell offers, in my belief, the exact same thing that a lot of our midfielders offer. So I think, you know, Colby, maybe not the last 2 weeks, but has been flatter this season. But I think we need to back him for his run and his carry and his foot skills. But then Powell, I think there's other players where you could maybe shuffle around. Does Powell play maybe more a wing, you know? Or Bailey Scott's not holding that wing position. Put Powell on the wing, let him run up and down. Let him tackle on half back and push that ball forward. You know what I mean? So look, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but it's also just because I want him to be up there with your LDUs, and I want him to be the hyped player we sort of talked about at the start of the season. And he's not quite there when he doesn't maybe offer much more compared to what an LDU or a Parker or a Simpkin maybe does. So I think our midfield's a lot of the same sort of player, and I feel like there needs to be a slight shift there. That's why I always call for McKercher or O'Sullivan to get some CBAs. But look, the midfield today against the Lions held up really, really well, but then maybe that was Powell's slightly lesser game. So look, I don't want to harp on Tom Powell too much. We'll move on, because I know people get upset when I talk about Tom Powell, but I just want him to step up.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. I think the problem is that our hype versus in the preseason versus what is the reality is probably a little bit different. Like, I think Powell's really good games are really good. Like last week, you know, 28 touches, 9 tackles, very, very good game. His bad games are if today's a bad game where he's getting 17 to 18 touches or whatever, and he's playing against, like, spending a lot of time on Lockie Neal and the Ashcrofts and McCluggage and these sort of guys, like, I'm going to accept that. I guess my point is that Powell, my opinion only, Powell's made an incremental improvement. He hasn't made the stellar breakout improvement that maybe we wanted him to make.
Is he better than last year, though?
I think he is. Yeah, I think he is. Okay. I think he's tackling harder. I think he's a better all-round midfielder. I also think I understand what you're saying with regards to same midfield. It's a good point. I also think that we don't have the, like, Rolls-Royce ball user in there, like a Zach Merritt or a Lockie Neal, you know.
Yeah, Dacos.
So that is Dacos. That's a great point. But we do have some points of difference. Like, obviously LDU's got fast feet. George is like a beast at the ball. They're not like, I actually look at Lions midfield and go, like, they've got Ashcrofts and Neal are like very similar players.
You're right, they are similar. I guess they're just a class above, though, aren't they? But you're right, they're similar.
At the moment they are, you're exactly right. But you know what they have that we don't have, Josh?
What is that? Dylan Stevens?
Josh.
Oh,
no, Josh Dunkley. Josh Dunkley. And he is a guy that's just not heralded at all, but does a lot of grunt work, a lot of defensive running, and is just a key. He's pivotal to their midfield. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I've been saying, and anybody who's followed me on this podcast since the last year, I've been saying this for a long time, is we need a guy who's maybe a little bit more defensive minded, because all of our midfielders are ball getting midfielders.
Almost like a Will Phillips, perhaps. But look, we'll save that discussion for another day. Dylan Stevens, let's talk about him really, really quickly. My guy, I've been backing him since day one. And, you know, I don't know. I got to think about where I stand on here, because I know what the internet is like, and I'll cop the backlash for this. But look, he's been fantastic the last couple of weeks, and I think he's had a really, really good season overall. Ever since he's came into this team in the early rounds of the season, I don't think he's really put a foot wrong. I've always said, the thing he lacked was getting the ball. When he gets the ball, I don't think he does much wrong. And I think the thing this year he's doing is being a lot more aggressive in the tackle and in the contest. But he's finally starting to get around the ball a bit more because we're not just bombing it long off half back as much. And his quality is really starting to show through. And I'm seeing people online really start to come around to him a little bit. It's almost like a Colby McKerger situation for me, where I think he offers something so much different than what a lot of our midfield is. I want to persist with Colby and Dylan Stephens and Caleb Daniel longer, because we know we've got guys who can get the ball and bomb it forward, but we need the guys there to use it cleanly. And that's maybe why the backing of him from me is so strong. So I really like what he's put together. He's basically said to Bailey Scott, this is my wing. You can fight for your spot, mate, because I'm not going anywhere.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I thought it was really, really good. Yeah, excellent. He's had an excellent 2 or 3 weeks. I think that he's I think he's personally more composed, ball in hand. I think he's run into better positions. I think he's more competitive one-on-one and in the tackle. But you know what? One thing about the wing position these days is as a specialised position as there is in AFL. It's high time on ground. It's running up and down. It's popping up in the back pocket to cover defence, and it's popping up in the front, the forward pocket with the chip over the top that you've kind of run hard for. And I think Dylan Stephens is slowly working that out, and he's been excellent. And look, I've not been a fan, but I've also not been a critic of his. I think he is what he is, and I think in a better team he's going to be way better. But so I also think that our slight improvement in form has led to him having slightly better form as well. And that's not to take away from him, because credit to him. He's playing much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Especially all the criticism and how hard he's in an awful team the majority of his time at North Melbourne, obviously, and we're slowly getting there. But I think our clearance numbers and our clearance work, contested ball wise, getting it out to guys like him is a reason why we look slightly better out of the midfield against the Lions as well. So I think he also does a really good job of getting down in the back pocket, and when it does spill to ground, being the guy who sweeps around the back and distributes out of the back line. That's something we've really lacked. And I think he's done a really good job of that. And that is putting himself in a vulnerable position as well. And he always wants to be there. And that's something I always praised Fisher for as well. At least he wants the ball and will want it in those areas and try and distribute it. Unlike guys, potentially like what a Tucker can do sometimes, where he just won't find the ball and isn't in those spots. So good, great game by him. Love that my guy is proving a few people wrong. Let's just say that. So give me your Tristan Xerri thoughts, mate. Is he the best ruck in the comp, or top 3, or what's he doing? Because that was a fantastic game against a very, very good ruckman in Big O. He dominated. I haven't even looked at the hit-outs, to be honest. I might just go and get the numbers now, but what a dominant performance, and he's back to his absolute best.
Can I just point out something? The absolute disrespect in AFL 26 of having Oscar McInerney the same rating as Tristan Xerri.
Well, the new update came out today. Maybe they need to change that for the next one.
Well, let's hope they've changed it, because of all of the ratings, I think that was the most egregious. Because I feel like Big O is a battler. There's no disrespect to Big O, okay? Seems like a good guy. Did the right thing, obviously, with the grand final, and I felt bad for him there, but he's a battler. That's all he is. I mean, he's tapping it down to the best midfield in the comp. Like, they make him look good. And again, no disrespect. And I think Xerri did what...
Like a Nankervis.
Nankervis is better than... he's way better than Oscar McInerney. Because Nank gives you a little bit of grunt around the ball as well. And he's a bit of a hard bastard. Yeah, true. And I like that. Like, he fixes people up. And Xerri does that as well. Is Xerri in the top 3? Yes, definitely. I said this on the From the Outer podcast, the podcast that I do weekly. I'll just shout that out really, really quickly. But I said this a couple of weeks ago, is that this has to be the most even season when it comes to the ruck, All-Australian ruck battle. Because you've got like 6 guys in there at the moment. You've got Gorn, you've got TDK, you've got Meek probably, you've got Cameron from Collingwood. So you've got all these guys that are fighting. You've got
ruck's back.
Rowan Marshall. The ruck is big time. And look, each week it's like this seesawing, who's played well, who's played badly, what's that guy's super coach. Obviously Sherry's a big super coach pig, and he showed today that he's for real. He showed last week that he's for real, and he almost won us the game. So, he's up there. He's up there. Yeah, he's top 3 for sure.
Let's look at the forward line, and we'll get this, maybe not quite as much to talk about with the forward line, so we'll try and get through this a little bit quicker. Cam Zurhaar, probably our most dangerous forward on the day, to be honest, popping up in a lot of places, had a few opportunities, obviously had a shot to put us in front, even though it was a very, very tight angle. I like the game from Zurhaar. I like him in the sleeves as well, just the stash. I like it, and, on a last few weeks, Larky's been a bit quiet. Larky in front of goal is a little bit suspect, which we can talk about in a second. But good on Zurhaar for stepping up, and he's laying tackles again. He's competing for marks. He took a couple of really nice marks, and he's really trustworthy in front of goal. So I think we're getting a good Cam Zurhaar season after the big contract and that sort of stuff. Maybe want a little bit more, like some more highlights and big moments, because we know he can be so electric. But his base performance has risen a lot from last season.
Yeah, and like right now, we haven't got the King of Marvel just yet. We've got like the Earl of Marvel or the Bishop of Docklands or something like that.
Bishop of Docklands is fantastic.
We haven't got the King of Marvel yet, and I'm hoping that it happens. Ironically, next week at the Hello Turf of the MCG, where
he loves a game winner against the Tigers.
Yeah, he's kicks 6 against Richmond. That'd be fantastic. But no, I think I've been really happy with Zurhaar's consistency. Like I think the knock on Zurhaar historically is he just goes missing for long periods of time. Like I remember the last couple of seasons, it's like you look at the stat sheet, Zurhaar's had 4 touches and it's the third quarter, and and I understand not everything he does is measured in touches, but it seems like he's around the ball a lot more at the moment, and I think that's partly just the role he's playing. I also think it's the emergence of Paul Curtis, which takes a lot of the pressure off him. It's also the emergence of Darling and the third sort of tall that helps him as well. So I think he's been really, really good. One thing I will say is, and I understand people will agree with this, is we're really missing Curtis, not just his goals, because obviously that's obvious. He's been very prolific in that sense, but his entries into the 50 are generally quality entries as well. And there are a couple of times when our high half forwards just don't. They don't give us the best opportunity to score from their entries, and I think Zurhaar did that a couple of times today. That's a small thing. I think generally he played really well. I think in the absence of Curtis, Dersma was the one to step up, and again we probably hasn't gotten enough of the ball. Again, I've said this many times, like high half forward is starvation corner, and especially for a second year player, it's a difficult position to play. But he hasn't lived up to the Curtis level as yet. So I think that was a problem for us.
Yeah. Speaking of Dersma, I mean, we'll just touch on it quick and then I'll go to a couple of other guys. Maybe want a little bit more from him. I did want to see him step up a lot when Curtis has been out, and he had a couple of shots and kicked 1 point, one out on the full, I believe, or it dropped short, but definitely wasn't going to go anywhere near a score. So, that's a bit disappointing because they were within about 40 metres. I don't really see him flying for marks because I don't know if he's in the right position on the ground. I feel like they're not playing him as a wingman and they're not playing him as a forward. It's sort of in between, and that makes his game a bit in between. So I would like to see him get either that spot down the forward pocket to be leading at the ball and jumping, or to be playing on the wing so we can take those marks around halfback or the dump kick. So a little bit of a nothing game from Dersma, and I think he would need a big game next week, maybe to retain the spot with Curtis available, because I think this was a good Constanti game. 1 goal, should have kicked another one, but I think the little 1%ers he does, I think are on full display today compared to the last few weeks where he's been flat, and I think it's right to put him in conversation of should he be playing as that small forward and retain his spot. But I really like the tackle pressure. I think was fantastic today. He's getting up the ground and marking the ball a lot more. But the thing he did differently today was make good decisions with the football. And I know he had that kick to Larky, which I still think is a good decision, even though it didn't execute and win us the game. But even throughout the game, I think the handball decisions he chose were correct. The kicks he did were good. I liked what he brought today, and I think that is what we'll get from him. made 12 touches, I think he got all up. 5 tackles, which I'm assuming most of them would have been in the 50, if not near the 50. But the pressure he put on today was a big reason why we got repeat entries, and we should have capitalised off a lot of those repeat entries. But I just wanted to give him a bit of a shout out as well.
For sure, yeah. I think I've said this from the beginning. I think I was completely wrong on Constanti. I just didn't think I was kind of questioning whether he was up to it. I think he is. I think what he does is not measured in kicks, marks and handballs. It's the pressure, obviously the tackles, but pressure acts, things of that nature. Also, he's just another player when you're around the ball that he attacks the opponent so hard.
Yeah.
And he makes them a little bit worried. Curtis does the same thing.
Yeah, and we've lacked that for years.
Yes, and that's why I'd always give him the benefit of the doubt over RHJ.
Yeah.
Now, he's the natural replacement for Constanti, and I think it's a classic. Who's better? Like better ball in hand is RHJ. Better pressure is Constanti, and it's kind of pick your poison at the moment. Obviously, we've picked more pressure, and I think at the moment it's working. And I'm happy for him to be in this side. I think he's really done a great job personally.
Yeah, fair, sure. Key position players then: Larkey, Finbar, Jack Darling. So. Larkey, I mean, he's getting up the ground a lot more this year, it feels like. And I made a note that I'm kind of not as confident with Nick Larkey in front of goal as of recent. And he missed some shots he absolutely should have got. And then you can look back on these times and it's all hindsight. But, if he kicks a couple of those, do we win the game? And there's so many. There's obviously kicked, 11, 12 points or something. So there's 11 or 12 of those you can talk about. But, he's not at his best right now, and he's still getting minimal opportunity, which he usually capitalises on. But now you're seeing the downside of Larkey's type of game where when he doesn't capitalise on the minimal touches and opportunities, we really do lack something up there. I mean, Darling kicked 2, but before he kicked those 2, really wasn't in the game at all. Yes, his return was better than Larkey's, but Larkey had a better overall impact. And then lastly, maybe Finbar, I think it was probably the right decision to sub him off. A fantastic handball, I think, from a Kirch's goal when he was on the ground. I think that was a butchered kick by Powell, just really lumped it off his shin and made Finbar dive on the ground to get it. But, made the right play there. But, yeah, Finbar didn't really do a heap today. And I think it was the right sub call. What do you think about our 3 key forwards?
Yeah, I think Darling, although again it's similar to Constanti, it's not measured in kicks, marks, and handballs. Although we'd like to see more goals, obviously we want to go out and see him kick 40, and for Kane Corns to jog as many laps around the tan as we hopefully he can. And if he does, I will go down there and I will heckle him the whole way.
Absolutely,
I will go down there. I'll wear this North t-shirt and I will jog next to him and just heckle him the whole time. Almost or maybe even try and kick out his feet, or just piss him off.
Throw rocks at him, it's fine.
Look, Josh, I'm not a psychopath, not like you.
Could afford me, mate.
But I think, so in that sense, I still am 100% behind the Darling-Larkey combination. I think that really works well. I think Darling is surprisingly good in the second ruck. I'm not as sold on the melee or the third tall forward model, if that makes sense. I think you could argue that we've played slightly better, but with him there, and that would be a good argument. But I also think that when it hits ground level, maybe we are a bit slow. Maybe,
especially with Curtis out of the team too.
Yes, for sure. And I think that's the moves when Curtis comes back. Maybe Maley goes out. But
that was my next question to you. If Curtis would you play Finbar against the Tigers? Because maybe you could have that breakout game against a much weaker defence. Harris Andrews was playing off Finbar a bit, especially at the start of the game. And obviously we know he's going to win that matchup. But would you play him against the Tigers or maybe make a change there?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think you got to look at who would naturally come in to replace him. And if there's, I'm as down on Cooper Harvey as anybody.
I'm not high on him either. I'm just throwing out names. Any Ford or RHJ or
Geordie Payne.
Geordie Payne, 100%. I actually really wanted to see him play.
Yeah, part of me wants to see him play as well. More
Another
so
tackle
than
machine.
Cooper Harvey.
Looks like he's got a bit more goal craft than a Constanti as well. So
yeah, I actually think you're spot on there, Josh. I think that Maley probably plays, and then we do the sub halfway through the third quarter again. But
yeah,
I think Maley is just limited at the moment. I also think that the reality of it is that if it's not a run and jump, it's not much output. Whereas at least with Darling, he does tackle quite well, and he always has the second ruck. Yeah. I think if Maley was second rucking, I'd be like,
well, why do you think he's not getting a crack in there? Why do you think Darling? Like I haven't been quite as against the Darling, like you said. You're pro Darling in the ruck a little bit more than maybe the majority, and I am too. I think he used his body well. He doesn't jump at the ball, but I don't think we get absolutely torched out of the middle when he's in there. I think his physicality in there is really handy, and Finbar can run and jump at it, but he is a lighter frame. Why do you think they're sticking with Darling in there over a Finbar?
Yeah, I think it's just he gives them more surety, and I also think that knowing the system at an AFL level, there's a lot to be said for that. Finbar, like it's like, okay, Finbar, we're going to make it really simple for you. You don't have to worry about the rest of it. Just run and jump. Whereas Darling can take a lot more information, particularly with the CBA and clearance stuff. That's actually quite technical, and it takes a little bit of time for you to get there. So I think that's probably why they've gone Darling rather than Maley. The other option, obviously, is Teakle.
Well, arguably should have got a chance ahead of Finbar, because I think he's been in better form in the VFL. And obviously, look, we've only seen one game of Will Dawson playing forward, really. He kicked, a couple or two or three against the Bombers, and I think kicked one in the last game that they played on the weekend. So, yeah, I definitely think they're more natural footballers, I guess. I'm a bit surprised Teakle hasn't got a shot, because I think he did really well last year, and I think he should have got first crack. But Finbar's an interesting one. I did make a point on one of the last pods, and it's not a crack at Finbar at all. I'm really excited about him. I like when he jumps at the footy, big mustache, kicked a goal last week. It was fun. But if it shows a lot about our lack of recruiting ability if the guy next to Larky we're giving a shot to first is like an undrafted rookie selection who's incredibly raw. When we're at this stage of our rebuild, we've drafted key back on top of key back. And let me know if you agree with this. Whitlock and Will Dawson both have to work out. If we're going to be a good side within 2 to 3 seasons, both of those guys must work out, and both of them need to be at each end of the ground. Because if we have both of those guys in a key defensive role, we're not going to work. If one of those guys needs to go forward, I'm shocked it's not Whitlock. I've said this heaps, because Whitlock's a utility. He's played forward before. Get his forward craft down while Darling's there. Dawson has been a key defender his whole career. Train him into what he does best and make him a star at that position. I just don't get it. But I'm a bit worried about that second key forward position. I would give it to Teakle. Finbar, I like that he's there. Let's give him a shot. But it's just up in the air for me. I think it's going to be one of the things we look back on in 2 to 3 years and go, yeah, we really screwed that up.
I disagree. I think your point about Will Dawson, and I want everybody out there to understand something, and this is, we could have beaten the reigning premiers today with the team that we had out there.
It's true. True.
We could have beaten the reigning premiers with Toby Pink and Finbar as 2 key position players. And the reason why I wanted to point that out is because, and I've said this from the beginning, it's the how, not the who. It's about the system. It's not about the players. And yes, the players make a difference. There's no doubt about that. But what is the system doing to foster and get the best out of the players that we've got? And that's a big. I'm so big on that, because I don't think time and time again it's the good teams have shown that it's not about the necessarily the level of talent that you bring into your team. Number 1 is development, no doubt about that, but number 2 is the system, and what is your system like compared to other teams. Let's take Collingwood as an example, okay? Just an example. Myercheck, basically the same as Finbar. He came from the VFL.
A bit more reliable in front of goal though. But I get what you mean. The players I think the system makes the players, but I think you need the right players to make the system as well. It's almost like a chicken and egg thing for me. If we differ on that, that's okay. But
Billy Frampton, Josh.
Yes, but then look at the midfield they've got, and look at all the other players around them. We don't have that around them. And I'm thinking like if we're going to be successful, by successful I mean move up the ladder to any degree. If that's the way, if our system is to bomb it into the 50 like we've done for 6 years straight, then I want one of those 200 centimetre players down there who's known to mark. And Chom is that guy. He's, for me, a backman now. Finbar is raw. We've got 2 first round draft picks at 200 centimetres that, you know, should be able to do that better than an undrafted rookie. And I want to give them a go in that position. And I think you're totally right. Like, the system is the biggest thing we're lacking at the moment. But that if we nail the system with this group of players, over a 24 game span, we probably can get to 12th on the ladder at best. But then if you put a few more first rounders in there and some guys with the more talent and get them nailing that system, the ceiling is higher. And I think that's how we move into the 8. So look, it's maybe just debate for the sake of debate because, you know, maybe Finbar is a little bit quieter. I want to see him play next week, by the way. I don't want to change that. I want him to get his shot. But, you know, those 2 first rounders, those 200 centimetre first rounders and just per chance of the players that we're missing the most, I think we need to make sure they work out in the long term. Because like you said, you're not maybe completely sold on a Finbar. There's other ways to go. And if that's 2 keys instead of 3, I don't know. But that's maybe just where my head's at. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. We don't necessarily need a second, a third tall forward.
But Darling won't be there in a couple of years though as well. And it needs to be one of those guys taking Darling's spot in a couple of years.
Look at Hipwood. Like Hipwood has had a good, like, I mean, he didn't have that good a season last year. He's a premiership player. He's a second tall forward. Like, my point is that you don't need the talent of players if you've got the system. And I think if we can perfect our system, you made a very good point. We just keep bombing it in. That's a very good point and a very good observation. And my point is that we don't do that. Basically, is that
hopefully
we can play a game where you don't have to have 3 tall forwards. Because if you look at Brisbane today, they had Logan Morris and they had Hipwood, like 2 guys that are like Logan Morris is young, but 2 guys at the moment who are also rans, but they're able to create a malleable and an effective forward line, and we can do the same thing. It's just I don't think we need to get as pent up on the personnel is what I'm saying, because what matters more than personnel is how we're doing it.
Okay. No, fair enough. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out and if we can improve our effectiveness from the midfield, which I definitely have many questions on. I don't know if I believe we'll improve that with maybe the 4 midfielders we've been talking about that do have very low disposal efficiency, but I hope we turn into an elite midfield. But at the moment with those 4, you're able to use your Powers, your Simpkins, and then your Wardlaws, who I love in different aspects. I find it hard to see how we do that. But hey, Clarko's the master, so let's hope. All right, we'll go to the votes. We'll go to the golden helmet, and we'll get you out of here. For the lack of debate, I've sort of picked the 3 that I really want to go with here. You can let me know if you want to change anything, but I think I'm really passionate about these 3. But Jerry 3, Comben 2, and I'm giving another one to Dylan Stevens. I think he performed really, really well today. Shout out to Sheasel, shout out to Parker. LDU honourable mention, but maybe not on the cusp of those guys there. But do you have much debate over that?
Nah, Sherry whooped Osho, and Dylan Stevens playing pretty well. And Chom, man, I mean, he's had a good couple of weeks. He can take an in-step mark, and I think we're on for our pre-season prediction, Josh, about him leading the league in in-step marks. I think we're going to see a close run thing at the end here.
Well, look, we could do that review pod at the end of the year. Well, some of my opinions at the moment are looking pretty terrible, to be honest with you. So I'm going to get embarrassed by that episode. But hey, that's all part of the fun. And look, for me, I mean, golden helmet moment of the game, I've got to put Chum's marks. The 2 marks he took at the end of the game, it's just game-saving stuff. And I know, like you said, he could have been the starter of that passenger play to get us the win, or you can look at it as in he saved the game, because if that spills to the ground, all it took was a point to make us lose that game as well. So I've got to put it as Chom for those 2 marks. Wardlaw's goal, really nice. I did like Stevens and Colby's goals and stuff like that as well. But yeah, I think it's got to go to Chom's marks unless you've got anything else to put into that.
Yeah, just McDonald knocking out Jared Berry. I think that was like basically got us to where we were, weakened their midfield, and we stayed the same.
McDonald's 3-week suspension is going to get us a draw. Fantastic. Yeah, that's what I want.
And it's very very apt, because both of them will need helmets from now on after those concussions. Unfortunately, hopefully they're all right.
I think we should just all wear helmets. But look, we'll leave it there. Thank you for breaking this down. I know we're recording on the night of the game as well, which is something I don't usually like to do. But
it's late, Josh.
It is late. I think we're old now. We're past our primes, and we need to go to bed and have a lie down because that game was stressful. So. Thank you for coming on once again from the Outer Podcast. If you want to check out all Chiefs stuff, get on that. They do good stuff. He'll be around here every now and then as well, so you can hear his dulcet tones. And that can also, maybe I'll listen to this podcast while I go to sleep just because it's so soothing. So thank you for joining me, mate, and we'll chat to you again soon.
Thank you, Josh.